Honestly,
It was kind of a long week. I met with 25 people.
I'm overwhelmed and tired.
I am feeling grateful and exhausted.
My day started at 7:30, so it's been a real long day.
It's been a scary year. It really has.
I feel several weights of responsibility all at one time. I have a 11-year-old. I also work as a school counselor, and also I started a therapy practice 3 months before COVID became a thing. And that has been literally insane.
There's a real ripple effect when it comes down to the impact of a global pandemic. Practically speaking, people lose their jobs, they feel sick, they lose loved ones.
What comes with that? Depression, feeling down, feeling alone, feeling incapable even.
If they felt anxious in general, they feel a lot more anxious now because of the global impact. If they feel depressed, they feel a lot more depressed, and there's no homework assignment to get them out and socializing with people.
Isolation has been a key point, a key issue for a lot of people.
What I've seen is a lot of other coping behaviors that are not healthy go up. Things like binge eating.
And with eating disorders already being pretty private a lot of the time and very secretive, that has definitely increased some behaviors for people.
When we're meeting like face to face and then transitioning to being online is a very different experience.
Switching to telehealth was definitely very hard at first.
Initially, it felt very inadequate to be able to assess for things like suicidality, risk for self-harm, risk for substance use overdose that could be potentially fatal. It was very scary at first to be trying to assess those things through video when you're used to assessing in person.
You don't really get to experience the energy of another person. There's sometimes a rhythm of being able to talk to each other, and through online, it's having to make sure that I'm more attentive.
If the video chat program skips over someone's words right after you ask them about suicidal ideation, and you know that they're hesitant to talk about it anyways, and you have to end up asking them the same question again, and then it skips again, it's just, it's terrible.
Based upon people's like socioeconomic status, the type of privilege or the type of accessibility that they have to the spaces that they're in also really affects the privacy.
Not everybody has, a 5-bedroom, multi-story house where everybody has their own room and has their own space. So, the same place where you're doing your work on a day-to-day basis is the same place you're schooling your child, is the same place you're probably needing to connect to do your therapy. I can't patrol what's going on in their home, but I do try to check in with them and just make sure that if they do have children in the room or a partner or spouse or someone else, a roommate, do they feel comfortable with sharing whatever it is they're going to need to share with me. I certainly have had clients who go out to their cars, or they might go out to their porch or something like that, or walk around the neighborhood as they're doing their therapy sessions with me on their phone.
In my experience, it seems like they feel a lot more comfortable being at home because they're sitting on their couch, they're not sitting on a therapist's couch.
Doing it can also be really helpful for clients who, because of accessibility needs or mental health, have a really difficult time leaving the house.
People who would have otherwise canceled or not shown up to their appointments, generally speaking, are able to attend and more willing to attend video appointments.
When this is over, I anticipate some clients who will not want to stop doing telehealth. For convenience, for comfortability, for accessibility.
It has also acted as kind of an impetus for us to question our settings, for us to question the way that we do things, the way that we do self-care. This entire time I've worked at home 5 days a week. That alone has dissolved the barrier between work and home.
All these years, I've been pretty good at cutting off when I leave work, I leave it at work. Work and life are so intertwined now.
The kitchen is associated with my work now because that's where I go every time I have lunch or every time I'm on a break.
And you don't get that going into the office and running into someone and talking for a few minutes. You really have to be intentional about setting times up to see people. And I think everyone is so exhausted that like an extra hour on Zoom feels like a big commitment sometimes.
It's a lot. It's definitely a lot.
I'm gonna do some honesty here, some vulnerability. It has been really difficult.
You have to take care of yourself to do this kind of work.
I noticed that my body was in a lot of pain, my eyes were hurting. I just wasn't used to having that much screen time.
I take care of myself by trying to get my sleep, make sure I take care of myself physically, and I practice my spirituality.
It's gotten a lot easier to just say, okay, I need to take a bath and unplug.
I might just need to lay on the ground and just allow my spine to just take a break.
You just lay on the floor and pet a dog and eat chocolate.
Being in an unpaid practicum, like all of that is very, very tiring. So I try to be really nice to myself.
I am working so hard. I'm doing so much to provide for my children and provide for my family and make sure that they have a good life and a stable life, that I maybe am missing parts of them. I started making these corrections to how I was spending my time, pulling back from certain responsibilities that I had, not taking on extra responsibilities that I didn't have to, telling myself, okay, I don't need to be up until 2 o'clock in the morning answering emails.
It's okay to take the nap. It's okay to take a day. It's okay to sit down and breathe and to give yourself the things you need to recharge, rejuvenate, rest, and just be.
It's so much easier said than done.
There can be this fear of what if I mess up? What if I ruin this client's life?
Oh my goodness, am I good enough? That imposter syndrome is so real.
It's hard to talk about this one in particular because I actually just had a young client have a suicide attempt, very recently in the last few days. And it's just a shitty feeling. It just makes me want to just quit everything because I feel like I'm not helping anyway, and then it's time to use all of the coping skills that I give my clients.
I can do the best that I can do.
I'm just as human as my clients.
My insomnia got really bad. I mean, I've struggled with this my whole life, but at the same time that my clients, pretty much across the board, were complaining of more insomnia, I was having this struggle in my own life. I hit a point where I was like, okay, the problem-solving approach is not helping my clients, and it certainly isn't helping me. Well, if you didn't try that, then try this. And if that didn't work, then try this, and this, and this, and this, and all of these logic chains don't really do any good with the conditions that we have in our world.
Yes, there's COVID, and this past year, there was also social injustice that's happened.
The impact of the murder of George Floyd brings up a lot of feelings.
George Floyd's death really made me evaluate, what is the value of my life.
I can't necessarily just separate myself from just being here I am, I'm a clinician, and then here I am, I'm a person of color. No, I'm a person of color who is also a clinician.
This field is primarily white individuals. So how do we break that down? How do we build a gateway to where we have more of individuals like me as a Black man coming to counseling, coming to into this field?
When I think about my story and my own history in education, it's painful. It's painful. But I've heard the same stories, which is why we have a flurry of, therapists of color who are like, can I please work for you? And we're like, yes, we will provide a safe space for you because we know what it's like and we don't even have to talk about it. We already know.
Psychology was really used to validate how we were inferior to white individuals. So in order to go forward, I'm the person of my mind that I need to go back and understand and break those things down. Me, I'm walking in that purpose to be a generational curse breaker.
It's very difficult working in top to bottom white organizations where the power structures are white. And you have a different language that you speak as a person of color. You have a whole different reality, and you're just surrounded by people who don't understand what the world looks like for you.
We really got to break down counseling and really address the racism that is taking place within.
Minnesota has to contend with how they use highly educated people of color in environments where they're the only or one of the few.
You know what, I'm dealing with this. I would love to have someone that looks like me, that may understand where I come from.
Culturally speaking, Black people, Black men have been trained and socialized to just take a deep breath and then move on.
Men need to talk. I think, masculinity, the messages that are out there about masculine being masculine and not tapping into the vulnerable pieces of who you are. There aren't a lot of black males as a school counselor and as a therapist. So for me, I remembered and remind myself that this is purposeful and this is purposeful work.
As a queer person who caters to the queer community, there is nothing like finding a queer therapist for the first time in your life and really being validated and heard on a relational level.
Almost all of my clients fall under the trans umbrella, so trans, non-binary, gender non-conforming, etc. A big reason I specify that I work with that population is because there just aren't enough trans therapists. And so I like to be able to hold space for people who are looking for that, who maybe haven't been able to find it before.
As a person of color, specifically Hmong, coming from a Hmong family where there's also not enough Hmong clinicians out there, for myself, that meant I want to be part of that change.
Brene Brown talks about daring greatly, and that's something that I'm trying to live by because I know what it feels like to be on the other side of being able to express yourself as a man. And I want to show brothers that there's so much untapped potential that they haven't tapped into within themselves when they cross over to the other side of being able to talk about their feelings.
Specifically in the Black community that I'm a part of, there's this major history of stigma. Just the idea that like, oh, why would you go to somebody outside of your family for help? To see the amount of Black people that have shown up to say, man, I need some help, just warms my heart because I know that stigma. I've lived that.
People are beginning to show up more.
Shout out to millennials. You show up for therapy. You're gonna be what pushes through the barrier of this mental health stigma because you're ready to break through. And I applaud your efforts.
I've talked about this as a God moment. My faith is very important to me. I think that this is a moment where human beings are being shown that we need to treat each other better and we need to treat ourselves better. And if we don't, we're on the verge of not really existing.
Because we're on this continuum of life together. We won't go through this life without each other.
When we begin seeing just the humanity of people, you begin to also see the hurt and the desire for change.
To the extent that it's happening across the board, it's going to change the fabric of our society, at least a little bit.
That's very hopeful, because it reminds me that we can change.